the very beginning, we established very clear rules, and the rules were very strong, and the rules actually kept us. And the rules were like kind of the frame or a grid that we kept for many years, and very concrete rules like come on time, clean the space. There are no excuses. I mean, there are no excuses not to come to the rehearsal.
Hi everyone, welcome to Now Boarding, a new travel podcast by me, Payal Nair. This show aims at creating awareness about ecotourism, sustainable tourism, responsible travel, and a lot more. We will cover stories and journeys of people who are ecotourism specialists and those who are leaders in their field. We will also be talking to people who have had unique travel experiences, remarkable conceptual places to stay, unexplored cultures, and ancient histories of various towns and cities around the world. Join me in this journey of knowing more about travel. Get inspired to see the world and discover your inner self. Hi everyone. Today I am in conversation with Diana Milosevic. Diana is talking to me from the mountains in Serbia. Diana is a very accomplished artist. She's the artistic director of a theater company called Da Theater. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly.
Very good.
So she's the artistic director and founder, and apparently it's the first ever theater company in Serbia. So thank you so much for joining me today, Diana. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Thank you. It's really been a pleasure, and thank you for inviting me, and thank you for such a amazing introduction.
I mean, obviously, you've done a lot of amazing things, which is why probably my introduction is not, it doesn't half qualify to the amount of work that you're doing. So, Diana, let's just, start a little bit by telling us about your background. I know you're from Serbia, so just a little bit about you, and then we can talk about your amazing accomplishments.
Yeah. So I'm coming from Belgrade. This is the capital of Serbia. And Serbia used to be the part of big country Yugoslavia. And Yugoslavia was the country that unfortunately split into during the tragic civil wars during the 90s of the 20th century. But it's very interesting or strange because, of course, my identity was Yugoslavian. I was Yugoslav for like first 30 years of my life. And then we had to learn through a very painful process that suddenly we are Serbs or Croats or so on, because Yugoslavia split in 6 independent new states. And still, if you would really ask me where I'm coming from, I would say Yugoslavia or Belgrade, actually, because Belgrade is my home city. I was born there, I grew up there, and my education is in the special psychology and the theater directing. And then in 1991, I started to, when I graduated, I started to direct professionally. But then very soon I realized that that was not my cup of tea, that I wanted to form my company. So I co-founded with another director, Jadranka Anđelić, a theater company, Da Theater, that still exists. And parallel with that, I'm also a professor at the Institute for Modern Dance, where I teach directing and choreography. So this is in brief. So I don't know what else to say.
Yeah. So, so like I said in the introduction, this is the first ever theater company in Serbia.
It was the first professional independent theater company in Serbia.
Okay.
Serbia had a long tradition of the institutional theaters and ad hoc groups that would gather around one project and then split, or amateur theater. But we were the first one that established a professional independent theater company. And for us to be independent was very important, because when we started in 1991, the Civil War started, and then we didn't have to do anything with the state and with any kind of the politics or policies of the state. And this is why we co-founded our theater ourselves. So we wanted to say we were not founded by any other body.
Okay, so it's an independent theater company.
Exactly.
So what is the kind of, so when you started in 1991, it must have been very challenging. So
Exactly.
what are the different kinds of theater productions that your theater company got involved in at that time, and how has it evolved over the years? What kind of genre are you really not involved in, but what kind of genre do you create as a theater company?
Yes, when we started, we created a theater laboratory, which means that we wanted actually to continue the tradition of theater laboratories. That is the European tradition, let's say, of Grotowski, very famous Polish theater director, or Eugenio Barba, Italian director of Odin Theater, and so on. In short, theater laboratory means that it is not only about production of the shows, of course, yes, but the process is equally important. That process could last for a very long time, completely opposite of, let's say, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Sometimes it could last for a year or two, because it involves research and experimentation. And when we say laboratory, for us, it meant that we were creating conditions and that we were experimenting with those conditions. What is interesting about, let's say, our case was that theater laboratory also understands, implies the closed space for a very limited number of spectators, and so on. And when we started, we said we wanted to work in traditional theater laboratories, and we wanted to do, not to do political theater.
Right.
We wanted to do for indoors and so on, in the very controlled surrounding. What happened in reality was completely opposite. Our very first show was anti-war show. So it was done in an outdoor space of the city center. Literally the center of the city, the central square of the city. And it was the political theater because it was anti-war. And it was done in front of hundreds of spectators. And it was done in the very unsafe conditions, because in that time, our government actually initiated the tragic bloody war. And of course, we were against it. So basically, our reality dictated our beginning, and our beginning marked our history, because we started as the theater that immediately engaged with society. And the reason why we said in the beginning we didn't want to do political theater was because in that time, political theater was done in our country, according to us, by very corrupted, let's say, directors. The political theater of that time in our country lack real questions, real responsibility, and so on. From the very first moment, we started to explore questions as what was the role of the artist in the dark times? What was the responsibility of artists when people suffer so hugely around us? And we were in this very special, complicated situation because we were in the Civil War. And the Civil War was initiated by our government. So it was done in our names, to say. So we basically learned later from activists that what we did was to transform the feeling of guilt into the responsibility. And our answer was to create the show that was based on the Bertolt Brecht poems. And the very famous German playwright and director Bertolt Brecht wrote those poems while he was in exile in Denmark at the wake of the Second World War. And he really spoke as our contemporary. And that very first performance, in a way, marked our history forever, because from then on until today, we are exploring the topics that are connected with the relation of between the individual and the history. We are exploring the responsibility of artists. We are always somehow responding to what is happening around us.
So moving forward, after that period, how did your theater company evolve? Do you also have like workshops for new actors? Do you invite actors from other parts of the region to also come and be a part of your theater company? And how, in general, has theater evolved in Serbia?
Speaking about my company, I can say that the first 10 years were very special 10 years, because we worked in the circumstances of the civil war.
Yeah.
So basically the fall of dictator of that time, Milosevic, that by chance had the same surname as mine, but I have nothing to do. It's a very common surname, happened in 2000. So for the almost 10 years, we worked in the circumstances of civil war, after the civil war that ended with the bombing of our country by NATO, and then eventually the fall of dictatorship. I would say that basically our commitment to the theater and the vision that we had, and the vision was like that we can influence the positive transformation of, first of all, ourselves and then our community through theater, kept us going. And when I recall those times, it seems now almost like incredible. Have we been crazy? I mean, we were working under the air raids, we were working under the terrible pressure of what was happening, of hearing about massacres done by our troops, and so on and so on. But somehow we had this, from the very beginning, we established very clear rules, and the rules were very strong, and the rules actually kept us. And the rules were like kind of the frame or a grid that we kept for many years, and very concrete rules like come on time, clean the space. There are no excuses. I mean, there are no excuses not to come to the rehearsal. So on, so on. I mean, up to the moment when we were coming during the air raids, because it was in our DNA, to come and to work. And we continued to, from time to time, of course, not all actors remained, and it was economically, it was extremely challenging. And this is why from time to time, the actors were leaving us, or some other actors were coming. And very often we were doing auditions. And so, I mean, when I say very often, it means every couple of years, not every year or every couple of months, but every couple of years. We were doing auditions. And in that sense, slowly, like the core of the company and ensemble was created. And with that ensemble, or some actors that were coming or leaving and so on, we remained until recently. I mean, even today, there are people that work with us for 15 years, 10 years, and so on. We were trying to really, the rule was that in that time was that nobody could work anywhere else. And that was very tough rule. And this is why actors were leaving, because they had to support the families and so on. But we said, okay, let's try to put all our activities under the roof of the theater. I mean, symbolically speaking, roof, because we didn't have the space. But better focus all our energies than to, like lose the energy of doing gigs and working there and so on. So this is also, I think, the very important reason why we actually survived these very challenging years. What was very interesting was that we didn't have the actors from our region. It was very complicated because, our country was officially in the war with other countries in the region. But we had in that time an actress from United States, Kathy Randall, and an actor from Britain, from Great Britain, from England, actually, Alistair O'Loughlin. And they came because they were interested and fascinated with our work. They saw our work because we created so-called tactics of survival, we called it, because we were aware that we would be targeted by our government, because we were anti-war, we were very clear about that. I mean, there was one maybe free radio and one free newspapers where we were freely expressing what we felt and thought about the politics of our government then. So we realized that we had immediately to start to make the connections with abroad, with the companies and individuals from abroad. So we started to travel from the very first months of existence of Da Theater, and it was very powerful tactic, because by the time government started to be aware of us and started really to be, we got threats. We were not, of course, financially supported and so on. We had a strong network of theaters, universities, individuals that would support us. And our government wanted to present democratical face to the world. That was like a good thing. So this is why it meant to them. And this is what saved us, because we knew that whenever there was a pressure, we would be asking, our colleagues to write the letters and to support us and so on. But those two actors came out of our tours. Do you mind if I move from the sun? Because maybe
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
The picture. But those two actors we met during our tours, and they decided to come to work with us. And it was amazing, because in the very dark years of 90s of 20th century in our country, and literally dark because we had lots of power cuts, we suddenly had two people who came out of love for the theater. And so it was quite amazing to have also them in the company for some years.
What about cinema? Have you ever thought of getting involved in that medium of performance? And also, what kind of cinema is there at the moment in Serbia? Is there independent cinema in Serbia? And is it something that you've thought of doing, or you've already been involved in? Have you ever directed, whether it's a documentary or a film, a feature or a short film or anything?
Of course, I love cinema. I think it's amazing art and medium. I haven't been directing films or videos per se, but I did collaborate, and we did collaborate with movie directors that recently, for example, we created together with a film director 2 films about our last show, Dancing Trees. And one is really like the film about the show, the other is documentary. But we were like collaborating, me and another theater director, with the movie director, but he was the director of the film. Or we are using lots of video in our work, but also we collaborate with other artists for that. For me, these are 2 very different mediums, and I think very different skills are needed to direct the movie and direct the theater. And I was so absorbed with actually not only the work, but with the life of my group, that I simply didn't have time really to dive deeply into the film. But absolutely, I collaborate a lot with the video and film director.
Is there anything that, the last few words that you would like to share with young aspiring actors who are looking at making theater their profession and being a part of it?
I would like to say to them that to walk on this path of independent theater is amazing, and it is not easy, but it is gorgeous. It's glorious. It's the life that is absolutely, it requires full commitment. but it is also extremely rewarding. And but this path really starts with commitment and with opening the door of the studio every morning. So I would say to aspiring actors, get into studio and do the work, and you'll be on this path.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Diana. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and enjoy the beautiful weather because you're up in the mountains, before you head into heat of Belgrade. So, and I hope to come to your beautiful country one day. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
It takes a lot of hard work and commitment by me and my team to bring these meaningful conversations to you week after week. If you're enjoying our podcasts, do write in reviews, follow and subscribe. It encourages us to continue with our mission of creating a community. I also have a very small request. There is another way of supporting. A one-time donation from you will greatly help. You can reach out on our Instagram pages, Podcast Melting Pot and nowboarding.podcast. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Now Boarding, a travel podcast. Check out other episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. And of course, don't forget to share your thoughts with us. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes only on Now Boarding, a travel podcast.